raising a child is hard enough, but when they hit their teenage years, it can be downright difficult. Dr. Nina Rios-Doria is here to shed some light on how to deal with teenagers in your life. And can we agree that teenage girls are different than teenage boys?
We can agree that.
Okay.
We can agree. Girls can be very emotional, right? And one of the things I want to talk about developmentally, what are the teens going through? Because the parents are like, what happened to my child? They're all emotional. They're changing physically. So it's really good at this time to kind of educate your kids about, what's going to be changing within them, because this is the time that girls especially develop eating disorders. It's really prevalent among teenagers. So keeping the lines of communication open and really just support them, encourage them, and educate them during that time when they're changing physically.
So talk to them about their bodies. So you're saying like maybe at
early
13, 12,
start
maybe
earlier.
Yeah.
Start early. The earlier the better, because really sustaining that relationship through the teen years starts earlier, and just keeping the lines of communication open. Then emotionally, they're changing a lot, right?
Oh, sure.
I know you have 4 children, so
but they're all boys. So I feel like on some level I lucked out, just because I have friends who have girls, and I know that there's a time there in the teenage years, and I remember being a young girl myself that we go a little crazy.
Yeah, go a little crazy. And every teenager wants to feel like, okay, I understand what I need to do. They want to be very independent. So when the parents have an opportunity to allow them some autonomy, give them some choices, help them get involved in decision making, that can really help. Kind of make them feel empowered and not feel like, oh, mom and dad are just keeping on telling me what to do, and then they feel controlled and they start rebelling.
That's a really good point you bring up, because there's probably a fine line between giving them enough that they feel empowered, yet not giving them so much that they can take advantage of it.
Right. It's a fine line,
and every kid's different.
And every child's different. And I have parents in my office talking about that, like, how much freedom do we give them? And it's just really about finding that balance and what makes the child feel heard and understood. And that goes into, how do you sustain your relationship with your teenager? It's really good. I know when a teen gets home and they're stressed out, what do we want to do as parents? What do we want to do?
We want to talk to them.
And we want to give them advice.
Yes.
We want to tell them this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
And number one, I think the most important thing, if people are listening to take away, is to listen, validate, and understand. Just listen to your child and work on validating their feelings. I remember a friend of mine told me, it was a father, he said, my daughter was going through all these changes, and she was in this relationship with a boy, and he broke up with her, and she's about 13.
Oh, no.
Yes. And so it was her first heartbreak.
Yeah.
And he said he felt so helpless, and she was really emotional, and she didn't want to talk to dad about it, right?
Right.
So he held her, and he said, and he said, I don't have all the answers, but I just want you to know I'm here for you, and I love you, and if you ever want to talk to me, I'm here.
It's the simplest thing.
And they had an emotional moment, and they both cried, and it's just like, it brought tears to his eyes just because there was a connection, and that's what this is about. How do you stay connected to your teen?
I think that's a great lesson in just the simplicity of listening, rather, is just, it's so important, because you want to help as a parent. I know it's really hard for me to shut up and just listen, because like you said, you want to fix everything.
Listen, and then also one of the things teens need, they need structure. And they say they don't want it, but they need it. And so much research will tell you the importance of having that structure in place and having consequences in place.
Yeah, you're not there to be their friend. And I mean, it's so true. It's so true.
And have the consequences. Sit down with your teenager and start talking about, if you're late for curfew, this is the consequence. And talk about what do you think would be a fair consequence. So you don't get in a fight when they come home late. They've chosen the consequence. They already know what it is. And that can prevent a lot of arguments often with parents.
And be strong as a parent and follow through with those consequences. And I know especially when kids are little, it's hard, because I used to have these power struggles with my little toddlers, when I would try to put my foot down about something, and it's sometimes easier just to give in and just, give them what they want. But I guess that's not a real good
You brought up a good point, though. Consistency, even for children, especially when they're young, when they're 4 and they're just whining, you're like, okay, just have the cookie.
And just here's the cookie. Take it. Here's the whole box. Here's everything.
Right. But that's just being consistent with the children as a teenager, especially following through, even though they catch you in a good mood and they're trying to say, you know what, you grounded me for 2 weeks, but come on, Mom, I've been good all week. And you just want to say, okay, but don't. I think what you just said is so important. Be consistent and follow through all the time.
Oh, it's so hard.
And then finally, do want to say family connectedness is so important. How do you stay connected to your child? Shut off the iPads, the iPhones during dinner. Shut off the TV. So much research has found that when kids, teenagers, they open up most around the dinner table.
Really?
Yeah. And so we forgot about eating dinner with as a family, so that's important.
Yeah, and everyone's so busy. Everyone's at sports and at meetings, and so it is important to make that time. And also, don't you think the time that you're driving in the car?
I was going to say that too.
Is important time.
Yeah, and that sometimes, like
Captive
you said,
audience.
And you're busy, right? So have them say, you know what, put the iPhone away and let's just talk. And then he may say, or she may say, I don't have anything to talk about. Well, just put the iPhone away and we'll see if something happens. You know, just be open.
I love that idea.
Open to receiving it.
All right. Well, thank you. Get more from Dr. Nina by going to dthebroadcast.tv. She's always got great tips. Up next, sell by, used by, expires by. What does it all mean? We are breaking down the myths and the facts of all those dates on our food when we come back.